calling the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 44 of the House of Commons Special Committee on the Canada People's Republic of China relationship. Pursuant to the order of reference of May 16, 2022, the committee is meeting on its study of the Canada People's Republic of China relations. Just a quick note, as we saw during question period today, a feedback incident that was very problematic for our interpreters, so we would ask you to keep these earphones as far away from the microphones as you can. Just put them on that little decal that's on the desk and we should be fine. We don't need to go into more detail than that, I'm sure. We are having today's meeting in a hybrid format. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. For those on Zoom, of course, you have the interpretation choice at the bottom of your screen. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, we have a speaking order, but if you do wish to intervene, please raise your hand, and the clerk and I will do our best to make sure everybody is recognized and as close to the order as possible. We're meeting today on the matter of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, and I'd like to now welcome our witnesses for today. Her Excellency Maria Andrelita Sacramento Austria, Ambassador of the Republic of the Philippines. Mika Magnolia Fisher, Deputy Head of Mission. Leo Marco Vidal is Third Secretary. Madam Ambassador, you have up to 5 minutes to make your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chairs and members of the committee, a pleasant evening, and thank you for the very kind invitation extended to us. Mr. Chair, as a young officer in the Philippine Foreign Service, among my first assignments was to attend the Managing Potential Conflicts in the South China Sea workshop series, hosted by Indonesia and funded by SIDA. So early on in my career, I realized the important role played by Canada in the Indo-Pacific region. This year, the Philippines and Canada are celebrating the 75th anniversary of our bilateral relations. Though there is much to celebrate, one cannot deny the fact that the geopolitical backdrop of our partnership is no longer the same. In her keynote address in Toronto 7 months ago, Foreign Minister Melanie Joly described in vivid terms the state of play on the world stage. She said, "Our world is marked by geopolitical turbulence, unpredictability, and uncertainty. The tectonic plates of the world order are shifting beneath our feet, and the structures that are built upon them are fracturing. As a country that experiences 150 earthquakes a year, the Philippines clearly understands the analogy." Indeed, the world is facing a watershed moment. In our region, recent patterns of aggression and militarization and emerging arms races threaten our lands of promise with an uncertain future. Today, I wish to share with you 7 realities we face in the Indo-Pacific that were articulated by President Marcos at the recent Shangri-La Dialogue. First, the dynamics of this region is such that its future is being shaped not by 1 or 2 powers, but by many actors. Framing issues within the prism of power rivalries overlooks the actual situation on the ground and removes the agencies of middle powers, such as the Philippines and Canada. Second, the strategic competition between China and the U.S. is permeating the evolving regional landscape. This rivalry is constraining the strategic choices of regional states. This contest is exacerbating flashpoints and has created new security dilemmas. Third, we acknowledge the centrality of ASEAN in shaping the landscape of the Indo-Pacific region. It must hold its center as the lead actor in the regional security architecture, no matter how many minilaterals emerge. ASEAN has been, and in the foreseeable future will remain, the neutral ground where all the other powers of the world interact and engage regularly. The Philippines is slated to chair ASEAN in 2026. Fourth, as geopolitics continue to permeate the global governance infrastructure, multilateralism must strive to facilitate global action in response to challenges such as public health emergencies, humanitarian crisis, and climate change. the Philippines has consistently endeavored to make multilateralism more constructive, inclusive, and equitable. Fifth, the global commons will continue to be crucial to the security of all states in the region. Access of developing countries to the high seas and to outer space and the peaceful uses of science and technologies is crucial to international development. Sixth, climate change remains a deadly challenge for the region and for the world. It is the first truly global threat. And finally, advanced technologies may solve many of our old problems, but they are so powerful that they may also have the potential to disrupt our political and our social orders. These 7 realities muddle the waters that we have to navigate in our collective journey as a community of nations. It is in this light that we welcome Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, which strongly demonstrates Canada's decision to be an active, engaged, and reliable partner. When she visited Manila last year, Foreign Minister Jolie conveyed to President Marcos that now is the time for ambition. In direct response, the President stated, "Then let's get to work." We have received our marching orders, and already we have seen very promising developments. In the first half of this year alone, the Philippines welcomed 2 senior Canadian ministers, the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of International Development, and 2 members of Parliament. Canada's Indo-Pacific Agriculture and Agri-Food Office was inaugurated in Manila in February to strengthen partnerships and advance technical cooperation and support Canadian exporters in finding new business opportunities. Canadian cybersecurity experts also went to the Philippines, while a Philippine nuclear trade mission to Canada was organized in March. Last month, our Foreign Minister, Secretary Enrique Manalo, came to Canada and met with 4 federal ministers and many members of the House in pursuit of a robust, responsive, and mutually beneficial partnership. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the Philippines is among Canada's closest and longest-standing friends in the Indo-Pacific region, the oldest partner among all the ASEAN countries. Because of the 1 million Canadians with Filipino heritage in Canada, we are not just friends, we are family. Though we are on opposite sides of the Pacific Ocean, we are both making consequential investments in building a rules-based regional architecture that will guarantee the peace and stability of our shared region. We are committed to cooperating with Canada and other like-minded countries in ensuring that the Indo-Pacific remains an engine of global growth and a hub for human flourishing. Thank you, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now, we'll note that we have MP Ellis for MP Landsman today, and MP Dra for Mr. Oliphant, and MP Kellaway is online replacing MP Fragascados, and there'll be some other substitutions as the evening and hockey games loom. But 2 questions now, and our first 6 minutes will go to Mr. Kimich.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador, for being here today. You started by talking about the military tensions in the region, so I was going to ask about your government's position on ASEAN. How satisfied are you that as a piece of regional multilateral kind of architecture, to use a term you've used several times in your opening statement, are you satisfied with the performance of ASEAN in reducing tensions? I note that in the last week in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, there was a PRC Coast Guard vessel that blocked one of your resupply ships. So can you perhaps explain to the committee what your government's view of ASEAN and whether it has been a useful tool? Is it successful at reducing tensions? Because the look from here is that it's not succeeding in reducing tensions in the region.
Thank you for the very important question, Mr. Chair. The West Philippine Sea is an issue of extreme importance to the Philippines. We are on the front lines of efforts to assert the integrity of the UNCLOS as a constitution of the ocean. We also have under our belt the legally binding award from the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which we secured in 2016. For us, we are prepared to use all channels, all available peaceful and diplomatic means to arrive at a peaceful settlement, peaceful resolution of the issues in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea. ASEAN has remained one of the very important tools that we have. We continue to talk to China within the framework of ASEAN in discussing mechanisms to manage the tensions and move on constructively. So ASEAN remains a very important platform for us.
My second question was going to be on the Belt and Road Initiative. I note that your government pulled out in 2023. Both of our governments are still members of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The AIIB is a critical piece to funding BRI projects, but your government has pulled out of the BRI in 2023. So I'd like to hear what's the position of your government on why there was that pullout, and is your government considering pulling out of the AIIB as a kind of second stage?
Because of the developments in many parts of the world, including in our region, and the imperatives of economic development, there has been a process of recalibrating some of our engagements. Everything continues to be under review, and we will recalibrate to the extent that our national interest, especially at this point, the economic interest of the country. So we will go with what is best for our people.
And I was going to ask you, in the Indo-Pacific strategy that Canada's produced, there's many countries that are singled out to have their own pull-out sections. Now, the Philippines is featured, but it's usually mentioned as part of other ongoing strategies. It's not its own pull-out section. Do you think that's the place that the Philippines should have in the Pacific strategy that Canada has produced? Would you have liked to have seen more time spent making the Philippines a greater ally? And if so, like you can say if not as well, because you remain satisfied to work through ASEAN, that's an opportunity to work with your government. But if not, then what are the areas that Canada could better cooperate with the government of the Philippines?
Thank you. We will, as I said in my opening statement, we like to think that we are always special to Canada, especially because of the 1 million strong diaspora that has bound us together as family. While there is no special section for the Philippines in the Indo-Pacific strategy, Canada chose the Philippines as the site of the regional Asia-Pacific agriculture and agri-food hub. So we believe that that Canada recognizes the importance that the Philippines plays in the regional architecture.
And I was going to ask you, then going back beyond ASEAN, what are the other opportunities that you think that Canada could use in regional organizations like APEC and others to further get involved in the region? And the experience of your government as well would be useful to know. What has been successful non-ASEAN but APEC-style organizations that we should be trying to participate in?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very important question. We are very gratified to see that Canada is taking a more active part in the region. We particularly look forward to Canada's chairmanship of the G7 next year, as we believe that this is a very important platform for Canada to do more for the region, to forward initiatives and programs that will benefit people on both sides of the Pacific.
I was going to ask, it's interesting you mentioned the G7, but what about the chairmanship of Canada of the CPTPP? Is that not of interest to your government, or is that in order of interest? It's what happens that the G7 has a bigger impact in your region, to your country specifically, and CPTPP is less? Why that prioritization?
All the regional institutions work symbiotically. We believe that each has a unique contribution that it brings to the table. Many people are looking forward to Canada's chairmanship of the G7, as this is the organization where most of the major powers in the region are on the table. But that doesn't diminish in any way the importance of the CPTPP, especially in the region.
In terms of trade, what do you think are the opportunities for Canada that we have not looked at yet for trade specifically to the Philippines, beyond just obviously the very large diaspora and labor, a lot of people with important skills that we need in Canada, on the trade of goods and services, the opportunities that the Canadian market would have to sell to the Philippines? What do you think those are?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. That's a very important question for our country. We are really one of the challenges we have now is in terms of energy. The Philippines is highly dependent on fuel and oil-based. About 60% of our energy mix. So we have just we just sent a mission here composed of people from our side, Department of Energy, Department of Science and Technology, to look at and a private sector to look at potentials for learning from Canada on nuclear energy. We have also passed amendments to our Renewable Energies Act, allowing foreign companies 100% participation in our renewable energy sector. These are sectors which Canadian businesses might want to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Kimich. We'll now go to Ms. Yip for 6 minutes or less.
Mabuhay, welcome to this committee, to all of our witnesses today and Ambassador Austria. My first question is, how does the Philippine government feel about Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy?
The Philippine government warmly welcomes the Indo-Pacific strategy. We look at Canada as an old friend and partner, and we welcome the renewed engagement in the region.
Is there any foreign interference by China in the Philippines?
Foreign interference is a problem that I believe is shared by most countries in the region, and we are looking at working with like-minded states to make sure that we don't have this malign influence.
Do you have something like a non-profit organization that helps your citizens navigate the misinformation like Taiwan does?
We do not have a government agency
Or
doing that.
non-government? Yeah.
There are many non-government agencies. They call themselves. They verify. They are very active in trying to sort out disinformation and bringing the right information. There are also government agencies like the Philippine Information Agency, which is actively engaged in that.
Has anybody ever been charged for foreign interference?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you feel, well, you mentioned in your opening statement that ASEAN is neutral. Do you feel that ASEAN has been effective in their support for the Philippines?
ASEAN continues to provide a very good venue for us to continue discussions with other parties on even the most contentious issues. So yes, ASEAN has extended assistance to the Philippines in the sense that it provides a forum for discussion. And discussing is always better.
That's true. And you mentioned that you use ASEAN as a means or ways to speak to China.
Among other means, we exhaust all possible means. So we speak to China bilaterally, we speak to China regionally, and we speak to China in fora like the United Nations.
Do you feel the code of conduct has been working for ASEAN countries and also for the Philippines?
We are hopeful that we would have a more responsive, up-to-date, and binding code of conduct.
So Canada has had some near collisions with China, whether it's in the air or by ship in the Taiwan Straits. And the permanent court has issued a judgment saying rights to the resources or waters without lawful effect. How does your government manage these near collisions?
We have exercised the greatest amount of patience and restraint in handling the disputes. We believe that we have the law on our side. Our claim to the West Philippine Sea is not something we imagined. It is something granted to us by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, affirmed by the judgment of the Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2016. So we know what is right, we know what is ours, and we are prepared to defend this.
Many ASEAN countries wish to keep both the U.S. and China on side. How does the Philippines navigate between U.S. and China relations?
Both countries are very important to the region. In the Philippines, for example, China is a very close neighbor and our biggest trading partner. The U.S., on the other hand, is our only treaty ally. So we believe that both powers need to be engaged but need to be engaged constructively. We don't think that we have to choose sides.
Filipino-Chinese Friendship Day was yesterday, June 9th. How do you maintain people-to-people ties with China despite the maritime challenges?
We have always said, Mr. Chair, that the issues in the West Philippine Sea is not the sum total of our relations with China. Many Filipinos have family ties to China, and we have very, very strong economic ties. We share a lot of culture. But so people-to-people ties have always been at the forefront of a very good and healthy relations, and West Philippine Sea is a separate issue.
You mentioned trade and how important it is between Canada and the Philippines. And I noticed that much of the trade with Canada involves electronics or electrical supplies. Can you comment on that?
The Philippines is one of the biggest suppliers of ignition wiring sets to Canada. That is our main export to Canada. But the balance of trade has mostly been in Canada's favor. And we are now working to try to expand the trade relations to make it more commensurate to the maturity of our relations.
Thank you, Ms. Yip. That's your time. Now, we'll invite you to make sure you have your earphones on, unless you're as good at French as Monsieur Bergeron, which may be difficult. So if you're ready, Mr. Bergeron, the next 6 minutes are yours.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Excellency. Thank you to you and your colleagues for being here this evening. Testing. This is the interpreter. Testing the channel. This is the English channel. Testing. 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 Can you hear the interpretation? Testing. Testing. Can you hear this? Yes. All right. So let's resume. Let's start back where we were at. Thank you once again, Your Excellency, to you and to your colleagues for being here this evening. Thank you for your comments. They will be very useful to us in the context of our study on the Indo-Pacific strategy. As you may have noted, based on the questions from my colleagues, we are somewhat fascinated by this forum from our perspective that seems somewhat odd, which is ASEAN, where there are countries within ASEAN. Some countries are democracies, in some cases more authoritarian regimes, in some cases countries that have a friendly, or shall we say, relationship with the People's Republic of China, some a more tense relationship, some are friendlier towards the U.S., and therefore others a bit more tense with the U.S. But despite all that, this organization manages to stay together and maintain the vision that the group set out for itself. My question is quite simple, and I've had an opportunity with other witnesses, prior witnesses, to ask the question. Is it conceivable that there would be a red line that the People's Republic of China should not overstep to, in some way, affect neutrality within ASEAN? For instance, the violations or aggressions that your coast guards, your fishers in the South China Sea, that they're affected by?
Thank you for the question. That is a very important and a very delicate question. We hope that we will not come. ASEAN has been around since 1967, and I've been fortunate to have been working on many ASEAN issues since I joined the department. We have seen ASEAN grow and mature as an organization and handle many sensitive topics. So we hope that like to believe that ASEAN has been effective in managing these issues, and we hope that we will not have to come to the day when when red lines will be crossed. So, and that's why we continue to work together. We continue to work intensively to make sure that issues are managed and resolved peacefully.
J'aimerais revenir sur la question qui vous...
I'd like to get back to Madam Yip's question as to the reaction, the attitude, the support provided by ASEAN and its members with respect to the various harassment operations that your vessels are facing caused by the People's Republic of China, specifically an incident that occurred a few weeks ago, Burgess Sparkleys, where Filipino vessels wanted to extract one of their nationals to a hospital. China blocked the passage. What happens when this type of thing happens? What does ASEAN do in this case? And was anything done?
We were very fortunate. Thank you for your concern about that incident. That was very distressing to the Filipino people, especially we were very clear that it was a medical evacuation that was taking place and our boats were still harassed. We have tried to, again, manage the situation, make sure it does not spill over, it does not become inordinately violent on both sides. And ASEAN has helped us, again, by providing a forum to discuss these issues. ASEAN continues to negotiate a code of conduct to avoid these issues happening. We are not there yet, but we continue to move towards this goal.
Merci. Au 34e...
Thank you. At the 34th Summit of ASEAN in 2019, the organization published its own perspectives on the Indo-Pacific region. We took a few extra years to get to our own Indo-Pacific strategy. If you were to compare the vision that ASEAN has and the vision Canada has in the Indo-Pacific region, what distinctions would you draw?
Thank you for mentioning the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Outlook. The two documents are actually very similar in the sense that it aspires for a multilateral arrangement where all countries around bordering the Pacific and in the region are engaged constructively towards ensuring a rules-based order, because it is the same rules-based order that has underpinned the security, the stability, and the growth. So these two documents are both making very concrete investments towards this goal. So that is the fact that Canada came up with their own strategy is very welcomed, because same as other countries in the region like Korea and Japan also had similar documents.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, you are out of time, Mr. Bergeron. Your timing is better than mine. There you are. Sorry, we're just having a monitor problem up here at the front, so I was distracted, but thank you. Ms. McPherson, the next 6 minutes are yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Your Excellency, for being here today, and thank you for your team for joining you. One of my concerns that I have with regards to the Indo-Pacific strategy is I don't think it prioritizes human rights enough. We've pushed for there to be more included in there, and we've long, advocated for Canada to devote more attention to human rights in its diplomatic, trade, and security relations with other countries. And I have to just raise several human rights organizations have brought serious concerns about the human rights record of successive governments in the Philippines. In fact, both in Ottawa and in my riding of Edmonton Strathcona, I've had Filipinos raise concerns about human rights within the Philippines. These concerns include things like extrajudicial killings, indiscriminate aerial bombings of civilian areas, attacks of political activists, journalists, union members, and Indigenous people. And I do see that under the current government, the human rights record appears to be improving, that the government is now allowing United Nations human rights experts into the country. And gently, I would just like to ask two questions. First, what steps is your government taking to address these concerns that have been raised by Filipinos about human rights? And second, has your government agreed to cooperate with the International Criminal Court in its investigations into crimes against humanity, including during the quote-unquote drug war?
Thank you for the very important question. The Philippines, like Canada, places a premium on the protection of human rights. Under this current administration, there have been very vigorous investigations into allegations of human rights, particularly the extrajudicial killings. Even our current Senate, our current Parliament is also launching their own investigation, considering that we are doing our own internal investigation into all these issues. We believe it's not the appropriate time to involve other parties since our own internal mechanisms are working and they're working well.
Thank you. Well, and I guess one of the things in the Canada Indo-Pacific strategy, it states that Canada will also increase our feminist international assistance to address local development challenges, advance collective efforts towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and continue actively engaging and defending human rights in the region, including women's rights. Of course, we have a feminist international assistance policy. So I guess, what should Canada's approach be, considering that this is part of our Indo-Pacific strategy? What should Canada's approach be to protecting or to supporting the protection of human rights and particularly women's rights in the Philippines and the entire Indo-Pacific region?
Thank you. One very important topic that the Philippines has advocated on is the protection of the rights of temporary foreign workers. The Philippines has 1/10 of the Philippine population live and work overseas, many of whom work in many countries as temporary foreign workers. So the Philippine government has always been at the forefront of many, many efforts to ensure the protection of temporary foreign workers. We are thus very appreciative of the work of the committee, the Senate committee that did a study on the rights of temporary foreign workers. We just met with Senator Ratna Omidvar last week, and we have committed our assistance in whatever information they may need, because she spoke to many Filipino temporary foreign workers in Canada. It may also interest you to know that the Philippines is, I believe, the only country in the world who has welfare, both labor officers and welfare officers embedded in our embassies and consulates to make sure that the rights of our temporary foreign workers working abroad are adequately protected. And many, like in Canada, many of our temporary foreign workers are women in the caregiver sector.
In the care sector, absolutely. And I would say the United Nations has actually named Canada for having such a poor temporary workers program, in that there is a high risk of forced labor or modern slavery. And of course, women that are in the care sector are most vulnerable, or some of the most vulnerable, certainly. Thank you. One other question that I have for you with regards to Canada's focus in the Philippines. We do know that we international development projects are part of the Indo-Pacific strategy, and there has been some funding that's been allocated for that. Can you talk about the types of international development projects you think Canada should focus on with regards to engagement in the Philippines?
Thank you for the very important question. And this is something very close to our heart. Canada has been a very important partner of the Philippines in terms of development cooperation. But I have observed that the impact that Canada's footprint in the region, especially in terms of development cooperation, which is essentially soft power, is not very evident. I have referred to it once as an invisible footprint because Canada engages in many different projects, but on a small scale. We have advocated with our interlocutors in Global Affairs Canada to consult with national government so we can work together on projects or development projects that will make a bigger impact. For example, the ASEAN Seed Scholarships. Under the Indo-Pacific Strategy, Canada will increase funding will send more scholars for the ASEAN Seed Scholarships. But these scholarships are 8-month research programs. and researchers 1,000, for example, 100 researchers in the Philippines may research on 100 different subjects. But we were saying that if they would invest in, say, master's degree programs in issues that are important to us, for example, marine scientific research, considering the degradation of our marine environment, if Canada will fund 10 scholars doing their master's or their PhD in marine scientific research, that would create a very huge and visible impact. And that will be a very clear support to Philippine national development goals.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. We will now go to Mr. Chong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Ambassador. Good to see you here. Thank you for your comments. I'd like to talk a bit about something you mentioned earlier in your testimony when you talked about energy cooperation. I understand that your natural gas field has largely depleted in the last several years, and that you are looking for energy sources. You mentioned renewables, which is encouraging, as well as nuclear. I'm wondering if you have a need to displace coal and oil in your electricity mix.
Thank you. The issue of energy is very important to the Philippines. One reason why we do not have many manufacturing jobs in the Philippines is because energy is expensive. Our current mix is made up of 60% is coal and oil-based solutions. About 32% are renewables. But if we had to rely on our own renewable energy, we can only produce less than 30%. So we really need to partner with other countries like Canada, who has vast experience in clean renewable energy, to be able to do that. We are committed to changing our energy mix and making it better by 2030 and then another goalpost by 2050. But we need the help of our friends and allies to do that.
I understand that the government of the Philippines a number of years ago approved the Philippines' first ever liquefied natural gas facility. I believe that was commissioned a year ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And are there any other proposals being brought forward by private sector companies that the Philippine government is considering approval for additional liquefied natural gas facilities?
Thank you. Yes, there are proposals on the table, and the Philippine government continues to encourage more investments in liquefied natural gas. As I mentioned earlier, we have a revised Renewable Energy Act, which allows investors, which allows 100% foreign ownership in renewable energy, in the renewable energy industry, to encourage more foreign players to come in.
Are the contracts, first of all, I assume that from what I've read, most of the energy purchased for your electricity system is purchased by private sector companies. Yes. That's correct. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And are most of those contracts purchased on the open? Is most of that energy purchased on the open market, or through long-term contracts negotiated by by these private sector companies?
They normally purchase through the open market.
Open market. Well, as you know, Ambassador, there's a new liquefied natural gas facility, our first, coming online in the next, hopefully, short few years off the coast of British Columbia. That will be able to transport Canadian liquefied natural gas to the Indo-Pacific region. And I think there's much interest here in expanding that export market, which I think would benefit the Philippines. I also note that you mentioned 60% of your electricity generation comes from oil and gas. Coal is also a part of that mix, I believe.
Yes.
And that has a substantially higher greenhouse gas emissions profile than does LNG. And so I'm wondering if there's any interest in the Philippine government working more closely together with the government of Canada, not just on nuclear and renewables, but also on the export of Canadian liquefied natural gas.
Thank you. There is very clear interest in all sources of energy that will help us improve our energy mix. The initial issue was the difficulty in transporting LNG, but now that Japan has committed to buy a huge chunk, we are closely watching because if it can get to Japan, then there's a very clear possibility that there's an economic sense for it to get to the Philippines. So we're watching those developments very closely.
I assume you're referring to the Japanese government's direction to Mitsubishi to secure long-term LNG contracts for Japan's future economic growth. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. Now, in the next 5 minutes, it will be split between Mr. Erskine Smith and Mr. Juan. We'll lead with you, Mr. Erskine Smith. You want me to give you a 2-minute and 30-second warning, or will your built-in clock suffice?
I've got a clock, Chair. It's all good.
All right.
Thanks. Ambassador, I appreciate the time. I have two questions for you. And first, this is a study in the context of the Canada-China Committee. And what do you think is missing from the Indo-Pacific strategy, or what do you think could be, how do you think we can extend the relationship as between Canada and the Philippines to address one of the goals in the Indo-Pacific strategy, which is to counter the influence of China in the region?
Thank you. We believe the Indo-Pacific strategy is a very good first start. What people are watching in the region is how this strategy will be operationalized. Canada has taken very good first steps, like the establishment of the appropriate mechanisms, like the Regional Agriculture and Agri-Food Hub. So we are looking at how the strategy will translate into concrete projects and initiatives that will make Canada's presence in the region felt and better appreciated.
I appreciate that. My last question is more human rights related. I find it quite interesting. You have a situation where Maria Ressa won the Nobel Prize. You have a situation where she was just the commencement speaker at Harvard just a month ago. And yet, while she was acquitted of some charges in the fall, I understand some charges remain outstanding. Now, that was under the previous regime that she was targeted, and I would say, to undermine journalistic integrity. What is the state of play there, and what is the government's view of Maria Ressa's journalism?
The fact that she was acquitted of some of the charges against her is the fact that the justice system works. It takes time sometimes, but the justice system is functioning, and it gives a sense of stability, and it gives a sense of structure. And we're closely watching the progress of the case, which is now in the judicial arm of our government.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Ambassador, for testifying before this committee. And you've mentioned something important that's dear to my heart is the Indo-Pacific strategy, but more importantly, the fact that for the first time we have an agri-food hub office in Manila. And in Canada, we're lucky. We've got masses of land, but we're 40 million people. You have almost 120 million people, but 300,000 square kilometers of land mass. So obviously, when we talk about security, feeding your population is important. I just want you to talk about what that meant to you when the minister was there in February announcing the official opening of the office, but more importantly, the fact that Canadian farmers are now destined to feed part of your population and how that is important, keeping that, obviously, that human-to-human relationship, but more importantly, food is always an important factor in discussing and building relationships.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that very important question and the important contribution that Canada has brought to the Philippines in terms of our food security. Food security is a very big priority. And when Minister Macaulay was in Manila, I had a privilege to be in Manila at the same time. There was a personal side to the story. One NGO in the Philippines buys granola potato seeds from PEI and brings it to the Philippines and distributes it to at least 5 indigenous communities in the Philippines. And through that seed, the productivity of the potato farmers in those 5 areas have almost doubled. So on the occasion of Minister Macaulay's visit, about 8 or 10 of the farmers made a 6-hour drive from their mountain communities to present Minister Macaulay with their harvest. So, having witnessed that, it was a very touching reminder of the assistance that Canada has provided and how working together, the potential of the bilateral relations to improve lives of people on the ground. That was very important to us. Working together by leveraging the bilateral relations, we can translate it to a better future for many people. So that, to my mind, is a golden moment for Philippine-Canada relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much?
A minute.
A minute. So often in trades, some countries, without naming them, will unilaterally impose or break off trade or impose non-trade barriers because of X, Y, Z. How do you believe that Canada would ever do that to the Philippines, or do we have that strained tie between the Philippine country and Canada, and specifically when we talk about exporting food to your country?
Canada and the Philippines have a long history of sharing values, including the rule of law, democracy. So I believe that if there were any dispute between the Philippines and Canada, we can resolve it peacefully without resorting to economic measures.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Duran. We'll now go to Mr. Bergeron for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear the interpreter? At the beginning of last May, the Philippines, Japan, the United States, and Australia held the second ever meeting of the defense leaders of the four nations in Hawaii, the first having taken place in Singapore on June 3rd, 2023. During the meeting, the defense leaders reaffirmed their shared vision for a free, open, secure, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. They also expressed serious concern about the situation in the East and South China Seas. They strongly objected to the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels in the South China Sea. In September 2023, you'll recall that 2 Royal Canadian Navy ships, in the context of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, took part in joint naval exercises with the Philippine Navy in the South China Sea. Do you think that all countries sharing this vision for the Indo-Pacific should take part in these meetings of heads of defense? And another question, why is Canada not part of this?
The Philippines, has always been supportive of Canada's more intense engagement in the region. In certain mechanisms, there are, like, for example, in the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus, there are administrative challenges. But we continue to discuss with our partners, both in ASEAN and our bilateral partners, on how we can engage more partners, we can involve more partners in these discussions and activities, because we believe that there are many more countries who have an equal stake in the issues that we are discussing.
Dans votre allocution d'ouverture, vous avez fait état de la perception.
In your statement, you referred to the perception of Canada through a specific program or project. What is the perception that the Philippines have of the contribution, participation, or military presence of Canada in the Indo-Pacific region?
Thank you for the question. Let me refer to a survey done very recently among ASEAN countries, asking them which among the asking them to rank the importance of the dialogue relations between ASEAN and our dialogue partners. In the survey, Canada, unfortunately, came out almost last. It was New Zealand and in most countries except the Philippines. Or in the Philippines, Canada was the seventh most important among our dialogue partners.
In that.
Family. We are family. We are more than friends. We are family.
All right. That's very good. Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Ms. McPherson, 2.5 minutes for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I almost wish we could stop on the We Are Family. It feels like a good place to hang our hats. But I did want to
Go see the
and go to see the Oilers play, of course. I did want to comment on something that you had said in your opening statement as well. You had talked about multilateralism and how important that was going forward, and how the rules-based order was something that the Philippine government strongly believes in. You talked about trying to work to make it more constructive and more equitable. How would you see the Filipino government playing a role in that, and how could Canada help in that manner?
Thank you. For one, we have made a very big investment in ensuring the rule of law is upheld by, for example, in our dispute with the West Philippine Sea, we brought it at great cost, at great time, and at great reputational cost to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, just to drive home the point that right is might, that we have the rule of law to fall back on when the world seems to be in flames. So Canada is a very natural partner in that effort. So we appreciate very much Canada's consistent statements of support for the arbitral decision, and for speaking out in situations when the Philippines is being harassed in the West Philippine Sea. So Canada's active and consistent stand in support of the Philippines and the rule of law, particularly the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, is a very powerful reminder that Canada is a very important player in the Indo-Pacific region.
Thank you very much. And just as someone who represents a large Filipino population, I know in Alberta there are a number of Filipino members, people that are living in that province. Thank you very much for being here this evening. That's all from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson, and I echo that. We have a very large, very active Filipino community. Narima de la Cruz is probably known to you, and she's certainly an all-star in our community. I'll take the opportunity to ask one question. With respect to Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, how do you see Canada's relationship with China and the Philippine relationship with China? Are they on an equal basis, and does the Philippines' involvement with Canada through the Indo-Pacific strategy, does that complicate your relationship with China?
Thank you. That's an important and interesting question. Both Canada and the Philippines have their particular set of challenges in dealing with China, and we have both handled it differently in our own ways, but I believe effectively. The more voices speaking for the rule of law, the better to ensure the peace and stability of our region. If we speak with one voice against issues that are common to us, like defending the rule of law, being fair in dealing with other countries, that's a very important signal. So the relations between Canada and the Philippines in the context of the Indo-Pacific strategy, I believe, bolsters both our positions in dealing with other powers.
Okay, one more question, just one more. We've heard from other people, especially the ASEAN representatives who visited us a while back, that one thing that Canada should be considering is an ongoing relationship, given that relationships are built over a long period of time. Would the Philippines share that opinion?
We welcome a more consistent, engaged, and reliable partner, which we see Canada as. The fact that you are now putting institutions in the region, for example, in the Philippines, the Regional Agri-Food Office, then EDC is opening more offices, FinDev will soon be opening more offices. You have appointed a special envoy for the Indo-Pacific. There's a special trade representative on the ground. These are all signs to us that Canada is engaging, and it will be a long-term engagement, and that's very welcome.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your visit with us tonight. We will now pause because we are going to go in and do some committee business. So we would ask anybody who's not involved in the meeting as staff, etc., we'll pause and allow you to make your exit
Point of
while we
order.
get set up.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kimmich.
Sure, Chair, but on my clock here, I have we're going till 8 p.m. with the ambassador. I'm wondering if the ambassador has that extra 30 minutes.
No, the ambassador was very kind actually to shift her time to accommodate an earlier start with us. But
That's a shame.
I wish we
tried.
could. I wish we could talk her into it. To be honest with you, Mr. Kimmich. Thank you. We will now pause.
you.